Hi everyone, it's Wendy Trevathan and welcome to Your Nurse Voice Matters. This is a podcast for nurses for advocacy, education and inspiration. And today I've got Alicia Hyland with me. How are you, Alicia?
Yeah, good, thanks.
Yeah, that's good. Nice to have you here today to talk a little bit about your nursing background, but also a couple of interesting things that have happened that have been quite pivotal in your career. So, really
Yeah.
glad we had our conversation last week to find out a little bit more about you. And I've been looking forward to recording today's session with you. So, Alicia, I know a little bit about you, but our audience don't. So, would you mind giving us a little bit of a synopsis of where you trained, what you've done, all that sort of thing?
Yeah, I trained as a midwife in 1991 in England. I was 19 and I was actually the youngest, I think, in the UK because I did the direct entrant midwifery training, which was not doing your nursing first. And so usually the midwives were older because they'd done the nursing, but so I was 19, I was 23 when I qualified and as green as grass. And there's a bit of a funny story about this. My mum was the worked with a woman called Betty Kershaw, and the pair of them developed the training program for Project 2000. And what that was basically the transition from hospital based training to being university based. And it all started because Mum and Betty, they didn't like it when the doctors were really more important and they wore the white coats and everyone had to stand up in those days when they walked in. And so they decided between them, Mum was at Stepping Hills Hospital and Betty was at Stockport. They were both tutors. They didn't work in clinical practice because they just stayed, as soon as they qualified, they really just stayed in education. It was their thing. And they decided to write this program, and they were very motivated, and they got it written up as you would be able to meet a criteria, and you could teach different. They called it modular curriculum in those days, instead of like the Florence Nightingale curriculum. And then they decided that they would be supernumerary and not included in the staffing and paid. And then they would be basically starting to pay for the course. And it was all, the goal was to raise the professional standing of nursing, right? And so they did all of this, and then they got the name changed from it being college to University of Manchester, right? Because they wanted it to really sound like the bee's knees. And then they also worked with the government. They were both on the UKCC board with it as an investigator, for the registration board. So they knew everybody. And they basically designed this program. They did a degree themselves in, my mum did hers in business. So then she was qualified to teach at degree level. And I kept saying, "Oh, you're mad. You don't need to do a degree," because she was in her 50s, but there was nothing going to stop her. Anyway, they got approval from the government and it went ahead. And then she put me on the trial, right? I got put on for midwives and my brother got put on for nursing, for mental health. And we did it. And so we learned a lot about how it was before, and then we learned a lot about, the future and how it is now, and, really reflecting on what are the good things and what are the things and the gaps and the lessons. But to be honest, I've been in Australia for 18 years, so I don't know everything that's happened in the UK. So all I know is what I know here. So I did that training, and it was good because it was sort of the best bits of what had gone before, and then there was a lot invested in it. And then when I qualified, nobody stayed at Stockport because it was really quite a bad culture. Because the midwives were really angry because we got so many skills knowledge gaps that we didn't have as a nurse, and it was really difficult. So I went to Bradford in Yorkshire, and I worked there, and they'd got a lot of clinical trials there, and it was really good. And I don't know if you know about the Peel report in 1971 and Archie Cochrane and the changing in midwifery, because it all moved from the community in the 1950s to then be going into hospital.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there was a big revolt of midwives after that report. So they wanted to be, not all in hospital and to keep the community up and everything. So what happened is direct entrant midwifery had started at the same as Project 2000, and you became just a midwife.
Yeah.
And so they particularly recruited mature women who were confident and articulate, so they could start this like movement of promoting normal birth and stopping the inductions and that sort of thing. And it was really good. And essentially in Bradford, it was a great tertiary unit, everybody working together. And we did auditing and research and everything. And the research was run by the Department of Health. So there were no politics or anything.
Mm.
So I did that. And then I watched different types of midwifery all over the world, because I'm one of those people, like gets itchy feet. So I decided I was going to work in different places. And as soon as I could, I got a career break and I wrote the letter to the Don to say how I wanted to fulfill this criteria to be a, fully fledged midwife. And she couldn't refuse. So she let me go to the Middle East. So by the time I was 25, I was in Abu Dhabi.
Mm.
And then my boyfriend wanted to come. He's a midwife too and a neonatal nurse. And the matron said, well, you can, but you'll have to go to the desert. So we went to the desert and we worked in Ruwais, and that was a little hospital next to an oil refinery.
Mm.
And it was on the way to Mecca. And we got heaps of experience there. And it was all, lots of unbooked women that they just rocked up and they were passing on the way to Mecca. And it was brilliant experience, and you just learnt on your feet. There was only 2 of us on a shift, and I was only qualified a year, so it was a very fast learning curve. And then we travelled around, and after 18 months, John wanted to go back to the UK and study. So we did, got my job back. We'd recruited 7 of them, other midwives, and the Don went mad. She said, don't let anyone else go. But we all went back to Bradford. And then we moved to a few different places in the UK because of, John's career, and he went into IT. And midwifery started to get really badly staffed, and midwives weren't sort of advocating, and I always did, and I always advocated for the women. But when I was looking after 2 women at the same time in the birth suite in Leicester, and they were pushing at the same time, one with an epidural and one without, I thought, I can't do this.
Mm.
So that was it. They planted the seed. I was like, right, we're off. We're not going. We're going to Australia. So I also had a baby, and I was horrified because we were completely left on our own. And she was 34 weeks, and she was having colour changes and everything on the ward. And she's 24 now, so it was pretty bad.
Mm.
So fast forward, we moved to Australia, and we got offered jobs wherever we wanted, and I chose a nice place because I'd done all the hard yards of the, inner city hospitals and all that. So I thought, right, I'm going for a quiet place this time. And it was great. We went to Redlands, and I ended up doing all the jobs there. And I was even doing the NUM job and the CMC job for maternity and paediatrics at the same time, because the NUM went off sick. And what I've learned was it's about everybody working together, and a culture's this only as good as the people that are there at the time. And, it includes all the doctors and all the education and everything. So it was great for a few years, and I thought I was in paradise. And it was because we had some brilliant doctors that all worked with midwives. But then the culture started to change, and I couldn't believe it. We had like doctors literally arguing and fighting in the corridor. Honestly, one day I was in the birth suite, and there was a woman who got PT. She was really deteriorating. And because anaesthetists don't have visiting rights, they couldn't transfer her, but they wanted her transferred and the obstetrician didn't. And so they were virtually having fisticuffs. I'm like, holy God, can you believe this? Anyway, there was a culture there between the anaesthetics and the obstetrics. And then when I became the NUM and the CMC, you get invited to be on these panels for different things and investigations and stuff. And I kept sort of being asked to be on these committees and these investigations, and I'd see like dodgy things that were going on, and I'd think, wow, they're trying to set this doctor up, or there'd be someone, as a midwife that they were trying to set up, and I couldn't believe it. So I just was always honest, but I didn't realise it was a common thing. So there was a bit of a big collective grievance there against the Don, and things weren't great, but then that got sorted out, and so I moved to the Gold Coast, and that was an old hospital, and they were moving to the new one with all like single rooms, and it was all fancy. So the numbers for bookings in tripled, and the private sector, they were all leaving to go to the public. So I thought, well, I hope they're looking at their numbers for bookings in, because we all know that they'll get more babies, don't we? So I kept nagging everybody, and no one was sort of game to say to the bosses, oh, we need to increase our bookings. So I thought, well, I've had enough of this. So I just basically kept asking questions. And then eventually I met the nursing director who was in charge of the division. Paul, he was called, and he was lovely. And I was asking him, and he said, well, you need to speak to the director of finance. So I was like, okay, well, I'll talk to him. And so I said what was happening. And I said, we're going to triple our numbers here. So we've got 6 months to get more midwives. And he kept saying, we'll see how we go. And I said, no, we won't. It's 9 months for a baby, 3 years for an elephant. That's it. We need more midwives. Anyway, I wasn't being mean. I was just telling the truth. And the really weird thing is, right, is the chief finance officer of Leicester, where I worked, pushing out 2 at the same time, and Gracie was born, right? It was the same CEO for Gold Coast, and he's still there on Calvert, and he's really nice, and we've had this conversation, but he didn't know what cause and effect is in healthcare, right? So we got more midwives in the end, and I don't think that got me any brownie points, but I'm not bothered about that. My hubby was the IT data manager, and every time I worked out there was a problem, like we couldn't. Sometimes in a flash, the bus comes in and you need loads of staff, don't you? So I was like, right, we need a little bit of a system so we can text everyone. And I knew that when you go to the hairdressers, that there was this thing where you could text people. So I said, right, John, we'll have one of them. And he helped me work it out. So we'd implemented this SMS system, right? And it went round the whole maternity unit, and it was really good. And it was fair because there was always those that wanted the extras got the call first. You know what happens, don't you? So we sorted that out. And I invented a tool to identify when you're going to report on clinical incidents and workloads, because we needed like a system and not just random stuff. Mm. And we weren't capturing the activity for our, telephone conversations. Mm. And there was a lot. So I got nagged the woman who was friends with the CEO and played golf, and that got sorted. And then I moved to the Royal Brisbane. And before I went, a midwife said to me, I remember it well, I was at Helen Coates' 40th birthday. And she said, Alicia, you know that a midwife's taken her own life by suicide at the Royal? And I was like, no. She said, yeah, she was bullied. And she said that a load of midwives have all left, and, they want you to know, and can you help them? And I was like, oh my God. So I know why bullying happens, and, you can't always blame the bully. It's multifactorial. And so, it's a system approach, isn't it? And it's like all the coroner's cases, all the clinical incidences, it's never one thing. So I just thought, oh, well, we'll work together. So before I went there, I'd been studying and doing an MBA because I was passionately interested about organisational psychology. Mm. And my husband, we call him Johnny Handbrake because he does put the handbrake on a lot. He said, I tell you what, Floss, if you go on, because I've been invited to go on this cruise around Papua New Guinea, which was a volunteer cruise for 3 weeks, right, in the Easter holidays. He said, if you go there, do your study, and that's it, you come back and you be a mum and a wife. And I said, right, okay, I will. So I went on that, and I'm jumping around a bit, but I'll tell you a little bit about that because it is good fun. Mm. So I'm there on this ship, right? And it was the first time they'd done it, and it was going around the villages of Papua New Guinea. And like everyone else was really sort of Christian and going to church on the top floor and everything. And I was like, I don't know what I believe in. I said, I'm just a good midwife, right? And there were different clinicians from all over the world. And so I was on this ship, and I'm there studying my MBA and doing these questions online and rushing to get it done. And this guy comes on the ship, right? And he was from Papua New Guinea, and he had this like flower head ring on his head, and he had this woman with him, and he had a pig under his arm with also had flowers all over the pig, a dead pig. And I didn't really look at him because I was doing this, and the internet was a bit slow, so there was a big chance that I might get, cut off. But it was good internet when they were all in church because no one else was on the online. Anyway, I said, I'll be with you in a minute. And then I spoke to him afterwards, and I said, oh, hi, I'm Alicia. How can I help? Well, I nearly died. He was the Minister for Planning. He was like the top politician that made it all happen. I was like, oh, really sorry. Anyway, I learned heaps from him because I didn't go to church, and he taught me a lot about leadership and different things. And I watched him when he went round all the villages. What he did was he used to say, right, you lot, come on. These lot have come from all over the world to help us out of their own money, and they're using their skills and knowledge, and we're going to build, and we're going to make healthcare, and we're going to have running water and everything. So put your egos away, and we're all going to work together. And he literally worked with all the men, and he did all the hard work, right? And his wife, Hasey, she did as well. So honestly, it blew me away, and he achieved so much. But then you know what happens, don't you?
Mm.
Naughty people get jealous, right? So anyway, he achieved so much and he was like my big inspiration. So then I went to the Royal, and within the first week, I get called into the executive department, and there's this woman who, lovely lady, Karen Roach, and she said she was there to do the reform, right? Because that's what happens every few years. They have a reform,
Mm.
and she was an experienced nurse. And what had happened is they just lost the training program for obstetricians because of the bad culture. And we had a lovely CEO. He was Ken Will, and he was a mental health nurse. And it was a job to work with everyone. And they didn't mention the suicide, but I knew about it. I thought, oh, they're not fessing up to that. But they had a bad culture with bullying in the birth suite with the team leaders. And then they'd got 3 coroner's cases, 3 babies that had died, and it was all the same thing, like escalation of the deteriorating patient. And
Mm.
so a case of when you call for help, nobody comes, but also knowing when to call for help and that sort of thing. And then identifying that there is a problem. So having the knowledge to know when to identify. And I ended up being on all the committees for the national standards. And basically, clinical deterioration is one of the biggest causes of, patients dying, and as clinicians not recognizing it. But it's not just the clinician's fault. It's about not enough staff. Everyone's tired,
Other factors. Yeah.
so many different things. And then, yeah, there is knowledge gaps in both camps, nursing and midwifery and medicine. And then when you've got a bad culture, you're not game to ask questions, and it's all this. So it's really, really tricky. And because I worked in a lot of different units, like 10 different maternity units, I knew what good culture was like. So I'm pretty passionate about that. It involves cake and tea and chocolate and everybody helping each other, and that's it basically, and asking questions when you don't know what you're doing, and nobody being mean. And it's called Mrs. Brown. Have you heard of Mrs. Brown?
Yes.
Yes. So in every hospital in the UK, I don't know if they do it now, but whenever somebody brewed up, it was like, half an hour after handover, you'd have tea and cake or toast, depending on what time of day it was, or biscuits or whatever. And sometimes the consultants' wives used to bake for us, so whatever we could have. And you'd shout, Mrs. Brown's in the office. And they did. And it was even on the tannoy, and everybody knew. So I just carried that on in my career. And, I did it in Australia as well, wherever I worked. And we worked with everyone on these coroner's recommendations, and it was with all the different types of doctors, because you've got anesthetics and neonates as well, and we all affect each other, and if there's a problem in one area, it affects the other. So we'd agreed with everybody on what the plan was for implementing the coroner's recommendations. And so I was quite happy. Coroner was dead happy. It was like, good, we're all sorted now. And then the midwife that was appointed to work with me to actually implement the recommendations and the education, her position got cut.
No.
So I didn't have that support. So I kept saying, well, we can't do it, because if I don't have her, I can't physically achieve it, because, it's a lot of work. And the midwives are not able to identify clinical deterioration, because we do have a skills knowledge gap, and we'd got 5 different universities all teaching differently, and we needed to bring everyone together.
Mm.
So I started putting on conferences. I'd been a Toastmaster, so that didn't fuss me or phase me at all. And all it is, you've got a big room and you get someone to do a speech and you show the slides and, you do the fun stuff. You get reps to sponsor you, and the doctors do it all the time. So why shouldn't we? And
Mm.
it was great. And then it was in a really sort of supportive environment and fun, and it'd invite the universities as well, so that we were all doing what we were meant to be doing with hemorrhages, or the prevention of hemorrhages and perineal trauma. And because they were really high, so we had 6% of all vaginal births having a third or fourth degree tear.
Mm.
And a fourth degree is the whole lot.
Mm.
And so like 6% is way too, that's worse than Papua New Guinea or the Middle East. So I was like, we've got to do something about this. And it wasn't just us, it was Australia, because I saw the data for the whole of the country. And then hemorrhages were at a litre, 14% of all births, vaginal births having a litre. And it wasn't vacuums, it was normal births.
Mm.
So anyway, I kept escalating and I said, we can't do it. And then I went to, I even got the union involved and, had a few meetings. And I couldn't understand why they wouldn't sort of work with me, because it was really obvious and we were going to get in more trouble if we couldn't do it. So I didn't sort of worry about it. I just kept sort of escalating and I thought they'll work it out eventually. And then the girls in the birth suite were all ramping up to get the unions as well for a grievance, which I didn't know about, with the NUM, and they were having a meeting. So I offered to backfill one of the team leaders and let her go to the meeting. And basically, she was a bit rude because she was grumpy. And afterwards, I said, oh, that's a bit cheeky. And I tapped her a little bit on her side. And anyway, I didn't think anything of it. She went to the meeting, and then a couple of days later, I gets called into the office with HR. It's always a junior HR person. And there was this letter on the table. They said, oh, we've got a letter for you. I said, all right, what's that? And prior to this, she told me that a couple of people had complained about me, but she didn't tell me what they were. And I was like, well, I hadn't had any bad vibes about anything I've done. So what's going on? Anyway, I said, what's going on? I said, I can't understand this. I said, I've been escalating, saying I can't implement these coroner's recommendations. And the next minute, you've had a complaint about me and I'm being investigated. So she was like, well, we can't talk about it. I'm like, okay. So I thought, nothing's going to come of this, because there's nothing. I haven't done anything wrong. I've only done like literally every law in the land I've followed according to APRA and everything. And I know all the laws because I wrote the policies and I made sure that every law in the land and every piece of research for every bit of policy was correct. Anyway, I got escorted to the birth suite, right? And escorted out and put next to the Don's office, right? Like a naughty girl, and was told I had to do all this work that I'd not managed to do before because we were too busy. There were 60 clinical incidents that were like a SAC 2 that take hours, like weeks to investigate, because you've got to interview everyone. Yeah. Even when I started. So anyway, then what happened then? I got really bad anxiety. I kept working. I ended up with an obstructed kidney, got really sick, and then I did some agency, and then they progressed this investigation, right? And I got accused of occupational violence, right? I reported to crime and corruption and reported to APRA. And so now this time I was having panic attacks. I'm like, I haven't done anything wrong. And HR was lovely. They knew that I'd been set up. And so then I got my GP to say that I could work, but not there, right? Because I couldn't physically work there because I would have a panic attack. And I did agency all over like the Gold Coast and Brisbane. I worked at Lady Salento as a change manager. I did finished off a bit more of my MBA and did a project management course and learned a lot of things and used up whatever leave I could, so I didn't have to go back.
Mm.
And then HR said, "Oh, you've got to go back, Alicia, because otherwise you're going to lose your job." So I said, "Well, have you sorted the culture out? Because they're going for me, and I can't get a reference because I'm like, who's going to want me when I've got like virtually a criminal record?" And anyway, I'd been given a lawyer by the union, two different lawyers. One when it first happened, and then the second one when I had to make me register notification to APRA, because I thought, if I don't say that I've done this, then I'll get into trouble. So I just said, right, can I have a lawyer, please? So they helped me. Now, at no point did they actually say this was reprisal of a whistleblower, and I knew that, but I never sort of escalated it and did anything. That was mistake number one. Well, probably about 10 actually, but the biggest one of my life. And I went back and I didn't hold a grudge. COVID happened and I just worked with everyone. The culture was still bad. The clinical incidents were still bad. They had a maternal death and, the bullying was bad. And it wasn't the team leader's fault. We didn't have enough midwives and we had the skills knowledge gap, right? And so we've got this constant, and it's worldwide. It's not the Royal, right? It's everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And so then what happens is you get called in the office again, and there's someone made a complaint about you, or you get an email. So I used to think, well, I don't want to make it worse by sort of replying in an email, but then, so I always tried to sort of diffuse things, but when it doesn't work, you have to, because you've got to protect yourself. So I'd write back, and that was my saving grace, was actually capturing everything on email. But then that means that they go for you even more. So there were a couple of things that complaints were made. One was something like, I've been showing some new doctors round, and I said, look, if you've got any problems, just come and see me, because I work together with everybody and I don't believe in this turf wars thing, and let's sort things out. Anyway, that was misconstrued to, if you've got a problem, come to me and I'll sort everybody out, a negative way, and it wasn't.
Okay.
And then there was another one where there was a nun who was really cranky in the clinic because her husband had died years ago, and so she was traumatized from it. And so she was really quite a volatile, attacky person, and made people cry. And I said to the Don and the ADON, I said, we all need to help her because she's upsetting people and it's causing stress. So they said, will you help her? I said, well, I will. So I got one of the wisest midwives in the unit that worked with her. And I said, Irene, we need to help her, because she's cranky and we're going to start managing the culture now. So can you give her feedback? Because she'll listen to you. She said, yeah, all right, Alicia, I will, and it'll be fine. And I was like, okay. So then when she did, this midwife didn't like it. And she said, why are you giving me this feedback? And she said, well, Alicia's asked me to help you. So that was it. She was off to the Don. And then they used that to set me up. I couldn't believe it. And I was like, I'm really trying to help here. So I escalated. We'd got a new nursing director, nursing and midwifery director, and he was really good. But they still insisted on getting me in the office with HR again. And then I had my union rep, and basically they were going on about complaints and behaviour and all this. And honestly, I hadn't done anything wrong. And So I just kept stopping the meeting and I said, I don't feel safe. And after the meeting, we went to HR and I said, they're doing it all again and I can't stay because honestly, it nearly killed me last time. I'm going off sick. So I went and got all my stuff out of my office, and the union rep was lovely, and she basically walked me out to the car park, and I was heartbroken because I really had tried my best. Um, and another thing that had also happened was when I was off the first time, I'd actually asked if I could go to work in another department because it didn't make sense to me to work in the place where someone had complained about you. And because about, you know, it's not a good idea, is it, for anybody?
Mm.
Anyway, they insisted that I went back into that department and I was going to work alongside this midwife. And I didn't have a problem with it because I knew it wasn't her. And so what had happened is I'd had an interview for the clinic to work as in the clinic, and in the interview process, the recruitment process, the Don told the whole panel that I'd been disciplined for occupational violence, right? And that's totally a no-no. So I was told by HR, look, you can take out a grievance if you want, but at the time, the all the way up the chain, it was the same, so there was no point. So I documented it, and anyway, going back, I left and I was still employed, but I went off sick. And then I started getting the letters in the post, recorded delivery. And in the end, I started having the shakes and panic attacks. And fast forward a few years, that was in 2021. I didn't like, I was literally, I
Mm.
got fibromyalgia and PTSD, anxiety and depression, insomnia. And I didn't like leave the chair for 2 years, and my husband was beside himself. I had another obstructed kidney and all of this, and a blooming out of body experience. I was so ill. And then I got drugged to the hilt on 2 lots of antidepressants,
Mm.
and I was on propranolol for panic attacks. I was on clonidine for nightmares, sleeping tablets. Honestly, I was off my rocker, but I didn't know because when you're in it, you don't know.
Yeah.
And everyone was like, "You've got too many medications." And the psychiatrist was lovely. I saw 9 in nearly 10 years. The first one, this is a bit interesting. The first one said to me, "You've got all the Claires, Alicia. Clairvoyant, claircognizant, clairsentient, and clairvoyant." And I was like, "What?" I said, "Not you as well." I thought it was a bit hippie. Anyway, I didn't know and believe what she meant. But all it is you're really super intuitive with all your senses, right? And switched on. So yes, that's me. And it's a little bit neurodiverse, like autistic ADHD thing,
Mm.
because it's very, very attuned senses. So you're switched on, but it gets very overwhelming because when you know and things are not going on that's right and wrong, it really stresses you out big time. I ended up going to a tribunal with 3 psychiatrists, and I got assessed as having a 7% permanent psychological injury and for adjustment disorder. And that's what you get because it's easy to prove. If you say you've got PTSD, then they'll say, no, you haven't. So you start off with adjustment disorder, and then the psychiatrists sort of admit that it's PTSD later on.
Yeah.
So I was offered 21,600 and I'd been paid out TPD, which is total permanent disability on any occupation under mental health. And I thought, well, I can't live on that because I'm 54 now. And
Mm.
so I said, well, I'll have to do that, legal case because I need more. I've got like the rest of my career, my life.
Yep.
So I did, and then 5 lawyers later, and a lot of messing about and being told different things, and no one wanting to represent you because they were scared to take on the government. And then there's also politics, all like a mindful of it. You can well imagine. Anyway, I get to the point where I've got mediation, and I'm like ready to go, and I thought, right, we're at the end here. And then just before the appointment, in December 2023, I get a call from my lawyer, and she said, "Oh, it's been cancelled." I can't remember why they said. Anyway, one of the girls from the Raw rang me up. She says, Bernadette's just killed herself. I was like, oh my God. So the midwife they used to set me up had then taken her own life. So my health just went down the gutter after that. And my husband, he's on the spectrum and he couldn't cope. And he went back to live with his mum. And my friends just swept in like an army of everybody. And anyway, it got put off, and it's got put off and put off, because by this time they knew that it was massive. It was bigger than Ben-Hur. It's an Aussie saying. Anyway, I went to see the psychiatrist for work cover, and he was lovely. And I'm usually, there for the other side. And he was horrified at what had happened, and he could see it really clearly. And he'd also could see that I'd done lots of things to try to improve things, because I didn't mention this, but after the first time, I thought, well, I can't go back to midwifery if this is the status quo. So what am I going to do? So I got myself a coach, and he was a Toastmaster, and he was a retired CEO of Hopewell Hospice, and he'd been a priest, and he was a paraplegic. And very inspiring, very grounded man. And I said, I told him everything, and he said, well, what do you want to do? So I said, oh, I don't know. I'm just a midwife. I haven't done anything else. So he laughed, and he said, you can do anything. I'm like, well, I feel like I can. Anyway, I decided that I was going to volunteer at the local hospice and do that. And I thought, well, it's just like end of life for but the other end, it's like a midwife for the dying. Anyway, Dame Cecily Saunders was the founder of the hospice movement, right? And she was a nurse, a social worker, and a doctor. And she used the hospice movement, which was all for vulnerable people, like the humanitarian stuff that I've been doing in the P&G, right? And she used it for dying patients.
Yes.
And so I volunteered at Hopewell, and Dee, the founder, had been mentored by Dame Cecily Saunders. And so she kept nagging me to give speeches and to set up a hospice on Tambourine Mountain. And I said, Dee, I don't know anything about dying. I said, I'm just a midwife. I said, my mum never included that in the training, so I don't know. And she was like, oh, nonsense, Alicia. You don't need to know that bit. You just need to know all the preparations. And I won't do anything if I don't know what I'm doing. So I basically applied for loads of jobs, couldn't get a job, and everybody said, oh, all the recruitment people, oh, you're just what they need, but not what they want, right? Because I'm straight. I wouldn't do anything that wasn't right for the patients. And I'd done a lot of clinical governance and a lot of safety and quality, and been involved in all sorts of high profile things, like on the state committee for maternal and neonatal deaths and everything. So obviously my CV was intimidating, but I was like really naive then. Anyway, I went to London to the first hospice, and I went and spoke to the CEO, and I went round it, and sort of found out everything about the movement and got all their stuff, nicked all their leaflets. They gave me everything because they mentor other places to set up.
Yes.
And they do it all over the world. And then came back to Australia, and I went round all the hospices in Queensland, well, most of them anyway, and northern New South Wales, and I found out the good bits and the bad bits of them. And what I realised is it's a framework, and it's basically, like the old days, see one, do one, teach one, and that's all it is. And you have to have a proper business plan and a budget, and you have to make sure that you've got the right amount of staff for the patients and not like too many, because then you've got too much and you can't afford to run, because it's no good having a CEO and a marketing director when you've only got 4 beds. It's kind of the maths don't add up, does it? So I worked it all out. And then we got a board together, a really good board, with lots of different experience. And I'd had a dream one night about how it'd all work out. And, it involved combis and a Beetle and a Harley. And I told my husband, this was going back when it was all happening before he'd gone back to his mother's. And he laughed his head off. And I said, it's going to work, John, because the funeral, we can do the funeral, and the funeral will pay, Fred's funeral will pay for Mavis's care. And he laughed. He said, Floss, you've come up with some right plans in your time, and that one's taking the biscuit. So I said, no, I'm telling you, it's going to work, right? Because it's fun and it's like normal and it's not boring, it's not sad, and it's just living the dream, right? And that's what hospices are about, but these Aussies don't get it.
Mm.
I said, right, I'm doing it. So we sold the house in England. We had our feature. He did shares because he was good at that, being on the spectrum, and he did stock, foreign currency. Made quite a bit of money, but the taxman got it all. And then I've got my combis, and I got them painted with flowers on, and they were very very pretty. And one is called Maggie, and that's after a nurse at the dementia unit on the mountain that I looked after. And then the other one is Sammy, after a little boy that died of cancer that lived on the mountain. And that one's an undersea fairground. And they're just for community engagement, and we can do bucket list trips, or we could, take them to the final place of rest. And we can do weddings and funerals as well to make some money. And then I got a gypsy wagon as well, and that's called Scarlet Rose, but she needs another name after somebody. I got a Harley, and there was a couple of doctors died from Redland who were amazing. Well, one's a psychologist, and so we're naming that after them, Dr. Moon and Dr. Rowe. And did all the branding, which basically means like your name and, the media sort of thing of what you look like and everything, and got that sorted, did the website and everything, and got all the community support, and I was ready to go. But then I went back to the Royal, and then when I lost the plot and I wasn't well enough, it's all been on the back burner. But September last year, when I had my final mediation, or what I thought was, the very corrupt lawyer, Bruce, said, from representing Work Cover, said, your client's not getting any money, she's delusional. Right? He didn't even turn up. I just got a message from the barrister. And I'm like, well, I don't think so. I'm not the one who's delusional around here. There's a lot of stuff. And the maternity services in the UK is in absolute disarray. They're on the 11th maternity investigation since the millennium, and they're reclassifying deaths as a stillbirth so that they're not having to be investigated because it's that bad. And that report comes out this month. So, you know, clinical deterioration is the key,
Mm,
and we need to all work together. So I got myself a LinkedIn photograph, a business card on Vistaprint, and I put that on for my LinkedIn profile, and I did it on Facebook as well. And I thought, sod it, I'm just going to go viral here. I'm just going to start being honest because I've got nothing to lose here because I've literally got no money. I've used all my
mm,
money to renovate the property to turn it into a hospice as a template.
mhm,
And then I realised all the fraud in NDIS because I was that ill that I got assessed for it and went through the whole process. So I learned all about that and how they use OTs that just ring you up and they don't even meet you. And then
yes.
people write the form for you. And I was like, holy God. And then because my daughter's on the spectrum and she got assessed, and I'm like, we don't need all of that stuff. What we do need is
Mm,
we need a little community hub which has got like a wellness, where we can do meditation. We've got relaxing music, massage, and aromatherapy to relax us and get rid of the anxiety. Yoga, Tai Chi, Qigong, cooking, classes for all the crafts, arts, and things that we've all forgotten how to do, and grow your own fruit and vegetables. So I did it, and I've grown a beautiful garden because I was that stressed. I just kept going outside and planting seeds and watering and thinking, oh my God, what am I going to do?
mm,
Anyway, then I thought, well, I've got to go see these politicians. So I made an appointment and I've nagged them to death. There's a blue and a red one. I say that because it's easier than the LNP and AMP. And there's one from the federal, one from the state. And they started listening to me, nagged literally every, and then I'd be tagging all these health ministers, but I didn't stop at Australia. I started tagging the UK and um, even JK Robert JKF Jr. because it's bad and it's the same everywhere, and so we've got to do something about it.
mm,
So in the end, I started tagging the Dalai Lama and the Archbishop of Canterbury and Bob Geldof to say, right, we need a social movement here. And I think they're listening to me, but I don't know. I can't take my foot off the pedal because they'll do all sorts if you don't keep your eye on them. But the UK have got a new, you know, uh, not a new government, but a lot of new, MPs, and they're ready for change. And this report's going to come out, and what happens over there comes over here, and that's why we're in this mess because we copied them. And in America, they're starting to look at all their litigation rates, which are through the roof,
mm,
and they've got to change things. So I think that there will be some changes, but my heart is still going like the clappers, and I'm having a good day today, but
mm.
it's not always like this. And
No.
I've got to go to get this crime and corruption for Queensland and Australia. I've got to do a criminal case. Yeah, but I've got to make sure that I've got to go via the right people so that it doesn't get blocked. And human rights declaration, I did that, and the Australian one said nothing to see here, so I kept nagging, and then eventually the New Zealand Prime Minister has sent his crew over to help us. And we've got issues with APRA, and we've got issues in the UK with APRA because we've got suicides over here and over there. And there's two things. One is those that have got skills knowledge gaps, so they make mistakes. Then there's the naughty ones that people dob in because they've been naughty. But then there's also, and they're not, the malpractice. But then there's also a massive cohort of people that are being referred as vexatious claims
Mm,
by their executives. And it's shocking. So even the data manager of the UK NMCs to taken his own life and died by suicide. So I hope to God that they're all working together, because we can't have it like this anymore. It is absolutely shocking. And we've got we've got the Medicare clinics, which are brilliant after hours. That's brilliant. That's just what needs to happen. Queensland are having these neuro hubs to care for non-acute NDIS patients, which is good. And that'll be kind of what I'm doing as a template. But we have to have continuity with these GPs, because when you don't, you're not identifying trends, are you, and all that. So there's a lot of work to be done, and I'm terrified. I've got 3 doggies and cameras, and I just keep telling the truth and tagging the media and hope for the best, and we'll see what happens. So if I go missing,
No, no,
please keep
don't
that
go
story and
missing.
give it to the police.
Don't go, don't go missing, Alicia.
But
Um,
honestly, no word of a lie. Every bit of it's true. And I'm sorry if I've rambled.
no, you've given a
Um,
really good your journey from, where you started as a very enthusiastic, sticking up for what you believed in all the way through, and had some horrible experiences. So thank you for sharing everything.
yeah, you're welcome.
I guess for our viewers, like we've got a range of nurses that listen to this, and definitely like with the wealth of experience that you've had, from your English days and then working in the Middle East, then coming to Australia and setting up services, through to like transpiring that into like corporate governance and being interested in other aspects of healthcare and social impact that actually, integrates into healthcare, but also from a personal level to have an experience like that is unfair and unjust. What what word of advice would you give to particularly our younger nurses out there that may be seeing things that are not quite right? Or, how do they navigate that in their work areas? What words of advice would you give
Well,
them? Mm.
my personality type is always what you see is what you get, and a spade, right?
Mm.
And that's been the best thing for me to get stuff done. And most people love that, but then naughty people don't like it, because it can be a bit intimidating. But that's been my saving grace at the end, right? Because everyone knows what you're about, and you're not you're not one of those people that causes trouble. So being authentic and kind, and always having integrity.
Mhm.
So you'll never catch me out, because I don't do anything wrong. I never do anything wrong. And I don't do gossip. I don't do lazy stuff. And I always do the right thing. So I think that if you're in a situation where there's a bad culture and there's problems, I just keep asking questions and saying, I don't understand, and how can I help you? And you know that someone's been really horrible, but if you're nice to them, then and you just say, "How can I help?" and you don't bite, that is the saving grace, because everyone generally is intrinsically good, and they truly want things to be for the right thing with a patient. But what happens is, because they're under so much pressure, the bad behavior comes out.
Mm.
And when you show them up, it's called poking the bear, and that is the dumbest thing in the world. You're going to get bitten.
Mm.
So don't poke the bear is my biggest thing. And I'm look, you've got to be humble. And I do find that, and then I know my kids will say, "Oh, you can't say that, Mum," but I will. We're not all humble anymore. Um, you know, and being able to accept feedback. And that's one of the things I learned at Toastmasters, is how to give feedback and how to receive it. And if you can do that, it's really good, because then people keep coming to you and they know that you're safe. And if you don't know what you're doing, they'll say, hey, did you notice this? And you go, oh God, sorry, thank you for letting me know. And
Mm.
that's what keeps healthcare safe. And those were the recipes that I've carried on for years. And obviously, you've got to have a massive lolly jar, and you have to cook and bake cakes and tea, and make tea, not what, and that's it. And use your intuition, use your spidey sense. If you know that someone's not a safe person, just know, accept it. It's theirs, it's not yours. And, don't vent to everybody, because then you'll get into trouble. So I think, well, I've seen that. That's kind of not the ideal way to do things. It's not what I'm going to do in the future, but I'll learn from it. And that's it. You don't need to go whinging about it. And that'll keep you safe.
Mm.
And we're all on this journey. It used to be amazing in midwifery in the 1990s, and the UK and Australia and the Middle East and New Zealand were the best in the world, and they're not. They are not. The middle, Abu Dhabi's way better now, and
Mm.
they've gone from rags to riches. Well, why? Well, first off, they've got the money. So we need to get the money off the greedy grubs that are spending it all and putting it out of the country and not paying the taxes, the big corporations. So there's that. And then the other thing is we do have some skills knowledge gaps. So we need to be humble and we need to look at what we're doing, not have this blame game, because we've got different types of clinicians now. We never had that before, Wendy, you'll remember.
Mm.
We've got now academic, corporate, statistician, data people, clinicians. What else? Is there any more?
Yeah, it's culture, human resources, data
Yeah, and I'm
manager,
like,
informatics.
you kidding? We all just used to be one and worked together.
Mm.
So I didn't think I knew anything. But it's only now that I've started sort of finding out and sort of navigating politics and everything. I think, well, these politicians, they don't know either. So it's about everyone working together and me saying, well, I don't know about this bit, but I know about that. And if I know the most, I'm going to put my hand up and I'm going to speak loudly and
Mm.
having the confidence to say it, and don't look back.
Mm.
And even if someone's sort of trying to undermine you, why are they doing it? And just help them. And so we'll see what happens. But I'm an open book, and I've had so many people come to me that are being bullied. Like, my declaration to the police is absolutely massive. The amount of people, it's shocking. It's honestly, it's like there's been people that have been accused of rape and all sorts of naughty, naughty, naughty things. So we've got to call out this narcissism is actually ruling in healthcare, and we've got to get it back.
Mm. Bring it
And
back
we'll
to,
only do that if we talk about it.
that's right. Bring it back to why we're there. We're there to help
Yes.
people. Yeah.
Yeah. Public shaming works.
Yes. Cool.
Public flogging. So I've said in all of this to everybody that's listened to me, because I've told everybody, as you can imagine, I said, we need public floggings because it will stop it and prevent it from others.
Mm.
So no one wants to be seen as a naughty person, do they?
No, it's very shameful. Yeah.
No.
Well, Alicia, thank you so much for taking the time out this
That's
afternoon.
all right.
Look after you.
I
And,
will.
and I'm sure if our listeners are wanting to reach back to you, what's the best pathway for them to do that for you?
Uh, look, I'm on LinkedIn.
Hmm.
So send me a contact request and I will do a chat and everything, but I can't help everybody because
No, just in case they've got
I'll
a,
be overwhelmed.
yeah,
But
right. You don't want
there's
to
a
be
lot
over.
of clinicians on there now sharing, and because it's professional, what happens is people state the facts and they know that everyone else can see it because it's a very public arena. And you just say, you know, I don't care. I tell the truth even with names because then there's no kind of insinuations or anything. And you can't be sued for defamation if it's not true. But I you just see that you're not alone, and you think, wow, there's there's amazing doctors and amazing leaders that have been absolutely persecuted, so they're copying it. So don't worry, we'll fix it out between ourselves,
Mm.
and it will get better. And reach out. Don't go to the point where you feel like you are suicidal. I've been suicidal. I'm under the acute mental health team. Jackie Pellini's. There's loads of us because it's abhorrent,
Mm.
but we're not on our own. And so when you know that, it makes you think.
Mm.
And that's the thing. When you get bullied, you get isolated. You say you're not allowed to talk to anyone,
Mm.
and then you're terrified. But you can talk to other people
Okay.
because I'm
Mm.
allowed to be a support person, and you're allowed to do that.
Mm.
So that's the thing. And yeah, people said to me, oh, take it as what is it, a compliment. It's like, you're having me on. But it is.
Mm.
And if you've not been in it, you can't believe it.
No, no, that's exactly.
So, yeah.
Mm. All right, Alicia. Again, thank you so much for your time. And to our audience out there, you've been listening to Your Nurse Voice Matters. If you know a nurse that has a story to tell, put them in touch with me. I'll have a chat to them just like I did it with Alicia last week, with the potential view to coming on as a podcast guest. You can do this anonymously. I have worked out a way that you can do that if that feels safer for you. Again, Your Nurse Voice Matters. We look forward to presenting to you our next episode. Bye for now.
Thank you.